following message is transmitted.
If you're going to be on the internet talking about it, why not just talk about it?
Yeah, where's the privacy in that, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
Unless, like, I guess I could see it from, like, an educational standpoint. Like, say you were teaching very practical, like, lessons, but you don't necessarily talk about what you're doing on your day-to-day practice. For example, like, I may teach people about the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, but I may not be telling them, like, the specific invocations I'm doing every day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, there's no need for that. I mean, I'm pretty open with everything because my whole goal is education and I'm not a good educator. So I just feel like I have to just say everything that I think and hope that people latch onto it in some way that's beneficial to them. I the one thing I tell people is don't mess around with the Goetia. Like, I'm not saying don't use the Goetia, but don't use the Goetia haphazardly. Don't be careless with the Goetia. If you don't know what it is and how to use it, and if you don't know anything about ritual magic, probably don't even touch the book.
Yeah. No, that book in itself holds such a heavy energy to it. You know, it's like you can tell it's like used with caution, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it should have a warning label on it. And it kind of does.
It genuinely should.
Yeah. It kind of does in the first chapter. It depends on which edition you have, but I have the one I have, which I'm not going to pick up right now because every time I do that and I reach back here and I pull it out and I show it to somebody for like a week afterwards, I'm like, why did I do that? Because there'll be things happening in my house. But anyways, the edition I have has the introduction by Aleister Crowley, and he does kind of say, like, don't fuck around with this book. Don't be stupid, you know. But I imagine that most people read that like, oh, that makes me even more excited.
Yeah, well, and the thing is that, like you said, very haphazardously, like you'll have these people who are just like literally drawing out a sigil and like calling on some ancient ass demon out of nowhere with no like element of protection around them, no real consideration that they're just inviting this thing into their home. Basically, it's different when you're consciously like controlling, capturing, releasing, and sort of like doing it in this very strict and controlled manner. But these people are just like popping the sigil on a candle and lighting it and saying, let's go, you know?
Yep. It's just, yeah. Because people don't understand what it is. They don't understand, period. Right. I have friends actually who are like skilled practitioners of magic who don't really understand what it is they're doing, but they do understand how to do it correctly, but they don't really understand what it is they're doing, if that makes sense. And that's not to say that I do and that what I believe is correct. I'm just pretty sure that it is.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right, because what a lot of people don't really consider with magic is like it is something outside of you, but it's also very much within you. So when you're calling on some kind of ancient horrible demon to do something, right, you're unlocking that part of your mind also.
See, that right there is exactly what most people don't seem to understand, and cool that you get it. A lot of people don't get that. They view the gods and the spirits as completely external of us, right? And I think the first thing to truly wrap your mind around in any spiritual practice, no matter what tradition you have, is that the difference between the inside and the outside is not what it seems. It's essentially the same.
Absolutely. I mean, because it's, you know, because the thing about magic is, especially when people get so fixated on manifesting something, right? Or bringing some kind of change. But what a lot of people I feel like kind of miss is it's alchemical. A lot of the times, like you may have circumstances like come to you sort of mystically, but ultimately the change is happening inside of you. You take them on. They don't take you on.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Because again, what you're doing is unlocking certain parts of yourself. So you're going to begin to take on those traits. You're going to begin to think and act in that way. You're really sort of merging yourself, especially if you're doing invocations. That's the whole thing.
Yep. Yeah. This is also why, and I listen, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. And I say that, but I mean, maybe I am. I don't know. But actors,
It's
Hollywood
getting harder
actors,
not to be.
it's getting harder not to be. It's true. I had the flat Earth guy on my show. I don't think the Earth is flat. I think that's fucking ridiculous. But I'll talk to anybody.
You mind if I smoke?
Uh, no, go for it.
Okay.
Anything's fine. Hollywood actors who use method acting, they're not invoking spirits per se, but they're invoking archetypes and made up thought forms, characters essentially, and they're invoking these characters all the time. They lose their own personalities. They're like, I don't know. I think this is why so many Hollywood actors have such severe emotional problems, is because they're not themselves. They're constantly pretending to be someone else.
I think you're right. I mean, because it's sort of, a lot of them will talk about how they have multiple personalities that they will take on.
Yes.
And that comes with an understanding of magic. It's sort of like method acting, even when you begin to just like act like the character in everyday life, right? Because you are
method acting is invocation. It's not ritual invocation, but it's invocation. If I'm trying to act like Tarzan and I'm using method acting, I'm invoking Tarzan.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing, is there's so many different ways to do this. I feel like most people practice magic unconsciously, because even before I had become aware of magic and really started seriously researching it and stuff, I found that this was stuff that I was doing naturally, which is why I'm so big on it being the inherent creative spark within us, because everybody does this, but with more or less control or awareness.
Yes. So one of the lessons that I teach in my school, and it's one of the big ones, is that the difference between the fool and the magician is that the fool believes that he's reacting to the outside world. And the magician has gained an understanding of magic, simply understands that the outside world is a reflection of his inner world.
Absolutely. Well, and it's interesting. Yeah, because, in the story of initiation in relation to the tarot, the fool is leaving behind everything he knows. He's like, forget this village. You guys are full of shit. I'm doing my own thing. I'm going for it. And then through whatever process of understanding, he becomes the magician, right? But even then, it entails going into the underworld, because now that he understands that the world is a reflection of himself, he goes to the high priestess to explore the depths of himself and understand what it is he even wants to create.
Yes. Yeah. And the magician, so to me, the way that I like to view the major arcana is through the lens of the hero's journey. And the magician is the first step. And the reason the magician is the first step, and what's interesting about that is it's a step most people never take, is that first step, right? They remain the fool their entire lives. But you take that first step and you become the magician. And I remember feeling that way the first time I drew the first tarot card from my first deck. I'm like, I'm a wizard.
Yeah,
and
totally.
But that's the energy of the magician card and of its corresponding life path, right? Like life path 1, these people, and I'm a life path 1, get very, very excited very quickly, and they dive right into something. It's almost like having ADHD, but the magician isn't the master of magic. He just gained the understanding.
Recently. Yeah, he's still a child in a lot of ways, right? Or he's like early in his grade, or however you want to put it. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I love that archetype of the fool's journey. And it's interesting, something I contemplate often actually is how the fool is number 0. So I actually think of the fool as the first card because it's pre-birth. It's before the magician is even born. And also, after the end of the whole cycle, of course, the journey starts again. So it's sort of this it's like the in-between of life and death even.
Yeah, it's the 0 point, right? It's like, it's purgatory. And I do think that is why it's numbered 0. And that's really a great insight. So many people boggle themselves with this. I've seen so many decks try to reconcile numerology with the tarot, which it already is reconciled, right? They just don't like the number 0. They really dislike it for whatever reason. And because 22 is a master number, they want it to be numbered 1 through 22, right? But that's silly, because 22 is the master builder. So the way I've always looked at it is that you are 22. That's you. That's the reader.
Ah, interesting. I love
Right.
that. You know, and
If you go through the process correctly, if you get all the way through, right, then you are the result.
well, and you know, it's funny because where the fool is zero and you talk about 22 being the master builder, I feel like no one is ever truly a master unless they're beyond this reality at all. And the
Yeah.
tarot is a reality in itself. So you're sort of playing God, the master builder, because you're the one forming that story. It's a whole
Yeah.
universe in itself, which is fascinating. I mean, that's I've never thought about that before, but that's really cool.
It's the major arcana is the whole tarot. Okay. So like I do a lot of things. And I think most people don't even know. I don't know if anybody even listens to the show, man. Like, that's not true. I know I have a like 2,000 something subscribers and a bunch more on Spotify. And like it that boggles my mind.
My partner
I
had heard
started
of you.
this show.
I told her I was going to be on, and she's like, "Oh, I know that show."
Oh, okay, that's weird. It's weird to me. But I'm super grateful for it. I love doing this, but I started it because I missed having conversations with my brother, who and I still have conversations with him, but we're both very busy. We both have a pile of kids. And he is Christian and I am pagan, and it's not impossible, but it's hard to have conversations sometimes, unless we're talking about quantum physics. Then we're like, yeah, let's talk about this.
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
yeah, and my other closest friend who I used to have these conversations with also now has a pile of kids and is very busy. So I started this show for two reasons. One, selfishly, because I want to talk to people about this stuff.
That's
It
the
helps
best
me
ideas, you
learn.
know.
Yeah, and two, because I want when I learned to read tarot and when I learned astrology, those two things specifically improved my mental health by, I don't know, 50 points at least, right? I had already been practicing magic since I was 15, but I was practicing magic straight out of the Satanic Bible. And don't get me wrong, I'm still a fan of that book. It's just that it's atheistic magic, and I'm not
Yeah.
an atheist. I did not have a true spiritual awakening until my 30s.
No, absolutely. You know, I started off doing magic when I was about 13, you know, so I'm right there with you. Like with like the first ritual I ever did was out of that book, the Necronomicon. You remember that? Like back in the 90s.
Yeah,
And then yeah, I actually own a copy of the Satanic Bible. And you know, I agree, it's a very interesting work, but it doesn't resonate with me because I'm not an atheist. I'm also
yeah,
not a Satanist, but even when I was interested in Satanism, I was taking a more theistic approach.
yes,
Um, you know, and so, but it's interesting because after all of that, because I really fucked my life up with that, you know, a lot of people, I mean, and a lot of these people who are just sort of like care to the wind, like calling on the Goetia and stuff like we we're talking about, they're going to experience the same kind of nightmare. Hopefully they make it out.
yep.
And it's funny, I actually got invited to a sweat lodge, a Lakota sweat lodge. And I did that for about 8 years of my life. I was a fire tender. I went on a vision quest and all that. And that sort of redirected my spirituality. That's not my practice today, but it was a good 8 years of my life before I even became grounded enough from those ceremonies and everything to even have sort of a healthy relationship with the divine again. Because another key note about me, when I was a kid, you know, I was a heroin addict. So, you know, and it's been several years since I've done anything like that. It's not an issue anymore. But when you're, you know, a 17-year-old heroin addict and you're fucking around with demons, it's probably not going to end well. You know what I mean? So I had to go through this whole process of death and rebirth, the fool's journey, if you will, to come
Mm-hmm.
out at the end of those 8 years of the Lakota ceremonies and all that to become my own magician and understand, you know, my relationship with the divine and what it is and what it isn't. And then begin this whole other journey of very much diving into like ceremonial magic, high magic. And that's, you know, my bread and butter to this day. And it's actually interesting because you mentioned how your brother's a Christian. I consider myself a Christian if I'm subscribing to a religion. I
Mm-hmm.
just don't really view it as most people do.
Yeah, and okay, so I don't listen. I love you. I'm talking to my brother right now. I'm not going to say his name. And I don't. If you listen to this, I want you to know that I love you, and I'm not saying any of these things in any way negative against you. I'm just telling the story of my life and how it relates to you. Okay, so chill.
He's your brother. He'll get it.
He's my brother. He'll get it. He became Christian later in his life, and before that, neither of us had anything to do with religion. Period. Our father was of the opinion that religion was for idiots and that it, did more harm than good. And that's what I was raised to believe, and I believed it for a long time. But when my father passed away, I was 12, and nothing could make me feel better. Nothing helped. And so in a way, I'll say how Christianity helped me is that a friend of mine said, okay, nothing is helping you. Nothing's helping you. You got to come to church with me. And I was an inconsolable 13-year-old kid. And I said, all right, fine, whatever. I'll go to church with you. Right.
Yeah.
And then went to church and had a talk with the person leading the service who was an asshole. And I explained to him my father passed away, thinking that all of this was bullshit. And what does that mean? And he essentially said to me, well, that means that your father didn't go to heaven. And I kind of blacked out. And I don't know if I pushed him or if I punched him, but I left immediately and I went down to downtown Santa Cruz and picked up a copy of the Satanic Bible. And what was crazy was I didn't go there to like, oh, I'm gonna go buy this book. I just went downtown to go hang out with my friends, found out none of my friends were down there, walked past the bookstore and felt like uncontrollably pulled in, and to the word metaphysics, which I didn't know what it meant, and to that section. And then sitting there was this book. And this is like the 15th copy of it that I've owned in my lifetime. But it started me on the path of magic. It didn't start me on a path of being a shit person or Satanism. I mean, maybe I was already kind of there. I was angry, but it introduced me to magic. And then I tried it and I did some magic and it worked. And it worked so well that I could not rationalize it other than magic works. And I never looked backwards from there. And again, like I'm no longer a member of the church. When I recommend this book to people nowadays, I say, listen, there's going to be some things in this book that will help you a lot, but there's some things in this book that you'll probably know better when you get to it. The chapter on glorification of the ego doesn't resonate with me. It did when I was a kid and I was struggling and I had no confidence, and so to people who are in that struggle, maybe it would help them. But your ego is not the smartest part of you.
I get my thought on that is a couple of things, right? For one, you being drawn to those metaphysics and even finding that book, that's God right there. I am the darkness and the light. I do all of these things, and even though it's maybe like the Satanic Bible and it's atheist, it started you on this journey of finding higher understanding. And two, part of the reason I think that Anton LaVey would be so successful, especially in a pop culture sense, is, that's the kind of people it appeals to. People who are young, who are frustrated, who feel like they have no power. And that's the bread and butter for forming a religion.
Yeah, it is. And he's a very charismatic dude. He knew what he was doing.
No, he knew what he was
saying.
As an artist. I love him as an artist, I think that he, on his deathbed, if I'm not mistaken, he said that he had made a mistake. I don't know if that's true, but I remember reading that somewhere.
I don't know if it's true either. And it's funny because I had Carl Abrahamson on the show, who's, one of the higher ups at the church currently. And I didn't really ask him about that. I wonder if he was there, but I will tell you that having read that book cover to cover at least 20 times, I don't believe that he was an atheist. I believe he had a different understanding. Yeah. I think he had a different understanding of what God and what spirit are, and he rationalized it. But see, here's the thing, and I've told people this a million times, right? If you, and so many magicians do this, and I did this for a couple of years as well. If you try to rationalize and take magic and put it into an entirely left-brained, physics-related, logical box, you will drive yourself insane. There is a mystic 100%. Element to it that you cannot, even if you're a master of quantum physics, you're not going to thoroughly understand this or explain it. But Anton LaVey came closer than anyone else ever did.
I guess I would say I'm not informed enough to really agree with that or not agree with it. You know what I'm saying? As far as Anton LaVey goes, I would consider myself Christian. I also have no qualms with Satanists. I get along with everyone, and I think that one of the greatest poisons we face is the way that Christianity is taught today, because it is the way that it is taught today that sends you straight to the Satanic Bible. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, and also our understanding of what the devil is a whole misunderstood concept. I mean, the devil is the principle of misuse. I mean, and it's completely separate from Satan or Lucifer. It's within us.
There's if we're talking about dimensions, and when I say dimensions, I'm talking about higher planes of existence, but like left to right, up, down. It's very easy to confuse dark and light, which I would consider left to right, with good and evil, which I would consider up and down. A lot of people get them conflated, that dark means evil and light means good, and they don't see that there's different dimensions happening here, right? What entities you work with doesn't matter if you're a good person. If you're a good person, fucking matters, though. Matters to me, because I don't want shitty people in my life.
Absolutely. I mean, that's where it comes down. I was just reading a book, Magick by Manly P. Hall, and he goes into that, in the principle of misuse and the energy, the cold chill of Saturn, Satan, or the flaming fire of Lucifer, Venus, or Mars, however you look at it. And it's sort of, it comes down to our, moral fiber and our reasons for channeling these things, or our complete ignorance, because our ignorance to it is also our own fault. You know what I mean? That's why a lot of these things sort of get channeled and can really ruin your life.
Yes, they can. So I have a story about that too. My closest and oldest friend, who I hope to drag onto this show one day, I made a big mistake with him because he's a lifelong Buddhist. And when I got really involved in magic, he was struggling with his life, and I was always trying to help him. And I would say, try this, I'm doing this thing, I'm exploring this side of esotericism, and maybe it would help you too. And his name he has a biblical name, by the way, and I should have figured this out. But I suggested to him, first of all, buying a copy of the Goetia. This is many years ago, and I apologized to him because it was cool. Just because he's an intellectual. Like he wants to, he's the smartest person I've ever met in my life. He's a certified genius, and I thought he would just be fascinated by it. And I also suggested to him trying working with the Norse gods, and that's who I work with. And both of these things just tripped him up. And I should have known all along he should be doing ceremonial, ritual, Solomonic magic. That's his heritage. That's who he is as a person. That's the kind of energy he embodies. And when he finally kind of got on that path, things started to get better for him. And it resonated and it felt better, But to me, see, you couldn't get me to do the lesser best banishing ritual of the pentagram for $1,000. I ain't singing. It's not happening. Okay. It's just not who I am. I'm not going to do it. I am a chaos magician with like a strong leaning into Norse paganism. And that's where I'm at magically, but everyone's at where they're at. Right. And so I don't want to say this as if it's truth. I want to say that this is what I believe, and nobody has to believe what I believe, but I believe that people on earth, there's not one correct religion, because everybody is attached to a different level of spirit or a different entity, a different God. They're an incarnation or of a fractal of that God. And there's not one correct God for everybody.
Absolutely. I mean, I always say it like this. Every religion, every practice, we're all heading to the same place. It's like, choose your aesthetic. Do you want a monk's stick or do you want a sword? You know what I mean? People ask me about my tattoo all the time, and that's exactly what it's about. It's about to be an expression of God, or a part of yet separate from. You know what I mean? And it's like you said, we all are really the same consciousness. It was put to me in a way that really stood out, and it's as if as an ocean, right? And one wave will stand out, and it even appears to be separate from the entire ocean, but it reveals itself with its crash because it returns back to the body of consciousness. So we're basically a wave of that one massive consciousness.
Totally. And I think it's excruciatingly arrogant to believe that we as humans could even understand that ocean. We can understand the waves. We can look at the waves, we can analyze the waves, and we can be very in tune with the waves. But I think so. God, right? Not the universe, the multiverse, is not something we can put into words. The way that it's written is perfect in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. It says the highest knowledge transcends all words, all symbols, all sounds. You can't say it, you can't draw it, you can't even think it. It's unknowable.
Absolutely, right? I mean, it is, and that's that was the biggest understanding for me, because even when I say like I'm a Christian, right? Really, that's just the symbolism and the story that fits me both, because that story of the crucifixion, the story of the resurrection, it all can tie to the sun, and it can all be found in all kinds of religions. So again, yes, it's like choose your aesthetic. You know what I mean? It's like, and what feels right, because like you said, when your friend got on a Solomonic path, right, that felt right, and things started going better because it was attuned to like him as a person.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But it's still the same thing. It's still the all. Still, yeah. It's still the the cosmic consciousness or whatever.
Yeah, it just takes different forms, and we see things through the filters of our own minds, right, and our own being, and our own. If you again, like, I'm very wary on the show about saying anything as if it's truth, because I'm a chaos magician, and our first axiom is nothing is true, everything is permitted, right? Absolutely. So nothing's true to me, and I don't know shit about shit. I don't know anything at all. And yet I run a school. But this is one of the things I tell people in my school is I don't know anything.
If you Dude, me too. That's the first thing I say. Is like, I am not a master. You know, anybody who's like a master of this stuff, they're not on the internet talking about it. We have no idea who they are.
And if they are, they're a cult leader and they're a fraud, right? And in my opinion, anyone who's out there saying like, I know the one and only secret truth, that's either an aspiring cult leader or a successful cult leader.
Well, I mean, that's, there's a Kabbalistic saying, he who says he knows doesn't know. And those who know don't say anything at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that I don't know, but I try to help people know themselves a little bit better.
Absolutely. I mean, that's where I'm at with it, because what I can do is, lend my experiences and the research and the practice and everything that I've accumulated thus far to help someone who is just behind. You know what I mean? It's like, there will be something to gain from, because otherwise it's, why share anything at all, right? I mean, why write anything or teach anything? Because it's like, no, there will always be more to learn for the teacher and the student. I don't even consider myself a teacher, really. But, more of a tutor or guide. So, you know what I'm saying? I don't know.
Yeah. You just, we are what we are. Yeah. I do this school and I'm really passionate about it. And I figure I've done so much research. I've driven myself crazy over it for a couple of years. And the more that I talk to people about it, the more I started to realize that they're benefiting from it. So, okay, now I started to really enjoy teaching. And so that's what I'm going to do. But again, like, I don't claim to be a master of anything. I just think this shit's cool and I want to share it. That's really all there is to it for me.
Well, and that's the approach that I really took with it. I do a live stream on my Patreon, which I would consider sort of a class. But right now we're sort of going through different books and just discussing as we go. And, I actually found that I don't have a massive desire to be a teacher. I like working with people one-on-one in some ways, or teaching magic, but, I'm very creative. So I like to present information and, whatever little wisdom I may have in more of a theatric or creative form. Hence why I got into doing like tarot readings in the tarot channel, because also I felt like that whole world was maybe sort of lacking the element that I could bring to it, because there's so many like cutesy tarot readers and so many new agey tarot readers that, maybe I would add something different to it and I could express things in a different way. And I do like teaching, but again, I never really considered myself a teacher, just because I don't know. wasn't what I sought out to do. Although, I guess you would say I passively teach, or I may take on students one-on-one. I do have like the option for that, for like mentorship and stuff.
Mhm.
But on a mass scale, I don't know, because when you're a teacher, people put such high expectations on you and really
Yeah.
unfair assumptions on you a lot of times, and really unfair expectations of you. And then you get people who are, especially on the internet, you get people who are maybe mentally ill, or people who have different motives for wanting to connect with you than they say initially, which I've dealt
Yeah.
with a lot.
I've dealt with that a very little bit, but it was very, I didn't like it. I've had a couple clients or students who I've said, listen, I don't mean any offense by this, but I can't help you. You need to seek therapy. You need to seek a psychiatrist. And then I've had people roll through also who like just, they think that I'm going to teach them how to set shit on fire with their fingers. And I'm like, this is not what we do here.
Well, absolutely. It's, that, and what I honestly find, and maybe this is a thing with the tarot community, but I find that there's a lot of people who are just lonely, and they're
Yeah.
looking to even like make friends with, or but there's a certain boundary you got to keep with that, and people can be very pushy, or
Yes.
not understand when you're not trying to be best friends, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's like because then I end up feeling like an asshole too, and it's like, well, I'm not trying to, it's just I have a life. I don't have any room for this person that I don't know, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And you're
And
not
so it's
helping
just this
them if
really
you,
interesting thing.
you're not helping anybody if you foster or encourage that kind of codependence, or that, like the one of the primary lessons of magic is like, do it on your own.
Absolutely.
You're doing this on your own.
Yeah,
And if
no, I
people
mean,
are comfortable with that,
especially
then
because, especially through self-initiation, right? Like, I mean,
mhm.
you could take a fraternal route, you know what I'm saying? But especially in the realm of self-initiation, which is what I talk about, because I mean, that's what I am in a lot of ways, um, that it's on you to do the work. No key. A lot of people think of magic as if it's actually a pet peeve of mine when say, when did you realize you were gifted? I didn't realize I was gifted. I did the work to
Yep.
receive said insight or gifts or whatever. People
Yep.
think that something is just going to be bestowed on them because they're special, and it's just never going to happen.
That's not how it works. Everybody can do this. Absolutely anybody can do this, and you can learn how. You just have to do the work,
It's
right?
just a matter of putting in the work, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot,
It,
because in a lot of ways, magic is for the have-nots. People, again, people who feel frustrated or powerless, they turn to magic, right?
mhm.
And so a lot of people, unfortunately, are trying to find something for nothing. They're looking for an easy solution, and magic is anything but that. I mean,
Yeah.
again, it's this whole alchemical process of changing who you are,
Yeah.
because ultimately we're our own problem.
Yeah, and people don't want to face that either. So magic is never a solution to, you have all these problems and you feel like a victim and you have this terrible attitude. Magic's not going to help you at all. It'll help
No,
you
it's going to
change
actually
that about
backfire
yourself.
probably.
Yeah. But it can help you completely change all of those things about yourself until you become a person who's positive and radiates positive energy and is confident and has developed your willpower. And then you are a walking magic machine. But you are either way. It's just that are you manifesting synchronicity that's positive into your life, or are you manifesting synchronicity that's negative into your life? There's not much in between ground. You're manifesting no matter what, because that's what we do. That's what humans do. We manifest. So it's like, are you manifesting intentionally good things into your life, or are you manifesting haphazardly awful things into your life?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the way I view even ritual magic, right? Because, I am a big fan of like the lesser branching ritual, the pentagram, invocation of, and like I said, when you get into like invoking and stuff, um, you know, that's what you're doing is it's basically a method to help you realize what you are. It's like a machine that's
Yeah.
been sitting there forever, like 20,000 years, and you finally turn it on.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then it starts functioning properly. But, most people, And you know, that's the thing is, wanting to sort of step the foundations of internal work, which is really where it is, you know, because you can't just jump straight into like creating the life of your dreams if there's no means to do that. Like, say someone wanted to create, you know, like manifest $1 million, but they work at Target. You're probably not going to do that at Target. You have to come up with some kind of idea that could even produce that amount of money. You're going to have to do all the labor to work towards that. If that means going to college and figuring that out, you're going to probably have to go through all that. You know
Yep.
what I mean? Or, you know, start a channel or do whatever, or what, you know, but it's all a matter of what is going to be shown to you and the work you're going to do within yourself, and even coming to a place where you feel at peace with yourself and have clarity to know what you want, because most people don't even really know what they want.
Yes. Then that's a big step, right? So magic isn't a shortcut. Magic actually adds a step. You still have to
Really
do
does.
everything you would still do to become a millionaire. You still have to do all those things. You do magic on top of all that, but what you get out of doing magic, hopefully, is the inspiration to keep going, to push
Yeah, I
through
mean, that's
the
because
other
that's
stuff.
really what it's about, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's not even you know, everybody talks about show us miracles and stuff, but it's not really even about that. It's about transcending to higher understandings, to awakening that self within your, you know, everything within yourself, like you were just saying, because, you know, it's all within you. It's just becoming aware of it, really.
Yeah, becoming aware. And I will say that when you become aware like that, when you start to notice that the world is just made out of magic and that's all there really is, and you're attuned to it, then things that seem miraculous can and will happen.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I've had just insane things come out of nowhere for sure. That's very true. I mean, because the, you know, like you said, it's that magician, you are the mirror of the world. It will start to work with you because the more conscious you become, the more aware you become, the more you start to feel like your true self and how we should be feeling and operating.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is like that stuff is so beaten out of us as people,
Yeah.
you know, with the mundanity of life, with the pressures of life, and no one really, um, you know, we're not geared to wait those. We're not like, I should say, herded towards that. We're herded
No, we're
towards the
not.
exact opposite.
Yes. We're herded towards being depressed. Like
Absolutely,
and
depressed,
even
tired,
the
everything.
even if you're a person of science, let's say you're an educated atheist, and you're like, the idea of spirit and God, that's just silly. Well, the idea that you don't matter and that the universe is an accident and that it's just a coincidence that any of this happened, there's no meaning to any of it, that's deeply depressing.
Truly, true. I
So
mean, and
how are you
they're
going to feel
weaving magic
inspired?
in that belief system,
Yeah.
whether
Yes,
they
it's
believe it
depressing.
or not.
Totally. So
And in a lot of ways, it's like, you know, that's and I, you know, I'm not gonna say like I'm an expert on Buddhism, but Buddhism almost like sort of resembles that to me. Buddhism is kind of dark in a lot of
it is.
ways.
Yeah. I'm
Um,
a big fan of Zen Buddhism because Zen Buddhism has this incorporates this element of humor to it, and to like the so what's known as lesser vehicle Buddhism is the strict, everything's got to be exactly this way. You're going to take 15 lifetimes to achieve any kind of Buddhahood or enlightenment, and you have to live exactly this specific way. And then there's greater ritual Buddhism, or sorry, greater vehicle Buddhism, which is a little less strict, a little more accessible to people. And then there's Zen Buddhism. This is like that shit's funny. And
yeah,
like it makes you laugh, and in that laughter you can have like real insights into the nature of reality and of being. And so I'm a big fan of Zen Buddhism. And I guess the difference between Zen Buddhism and traditional Buddhism, and if you're a Buddhist and you want to correct me in the comments, feel free. Like, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, but
me
it
either. By
seems
the
like the
way, I
big
don't know
difference.
anything.
Yeah, the big difference to me is it seems like with traditional Chinese Buddhism, its life is suffering, and with Japanese Zen Buddhism, its life is meaningless. But
Well, I
I
mean,
don't know.
yes, like, and that's what I mean, and like that, and there's value in that, but at the same time, it's like, God, how can
Yes,
you look at things like that, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess that's sort of that was the correlation to me is like, for me to view life that way of like, it would be devastating.
Yeah. Well, I will say that because I'm pretty close with several Buddhist people, and I have a real interest in Zen. When we say life is suffering, the real point is that you can't experience joy without suffering, and so life is suffering because without suffering you can't experience joy. But they need to fucking say that part because a lot of people don't
Yeah.
understand it.
I mean,
And
yeah,
with,
that
with
makes. I mean, because again, I'm taking a total layman's. I don't know. I have not researched, but it's just my general understanding of it. You know what I mean?
yeah, and with
Um,
Zen Buddhism, where they say life is meaningless. It's true, except for the meaning that you ascribe to it. So ascribe meaning to your life. Make your life meaningful to you.
I guess
That's
in
the
a lot
point.
of ways I agree with that because I mean that's sort of what we were talking about before. Is like we're all getting to the same place. It's just choose your aesthetic, choose your value.
Yeah, 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 exactly. And that's kind of what chaos magic is all about too. And it's why it was always attractive to me. Is like there's no one correct belief system. It's a choose your own adventure book. Just, ascribe whatever meaning works for you and then go for it. And I've seen, you know, I have friends who practice Wicca who get results. I have friends who practice Solomonic magic and get results. I practice chaos magic and I get results. So clearly, right, there's
there's a
something
correlation
underneath
there.
all of that, right? Just like there's not a correct language. English isn't the correct language. We could be doing this in Spanish, right? These different belief systems are just languages, but metaphysics, spirit, magic is like the concept of language, which is
Absolutely,
not something
yeah.
you can describe.
That's what it comes down to is a way of expressing something, a way of moving it that
Yeah,
feels right to you. Because it's like because even with that understanding, I know that I have a tendency to stick to a specific tradition of doing things because it's what deeply resonated with me. You know
yeah,
what I mean? So it's like for whatever reason, this path feels right to me, where this path feels right to you or them or whoever. But you're absolutely right. It all comes down to that underlying, consciousness that is
that thing you
everything.
can't describe, that
Absolutely.
whatever, that ineffable, indescribable thing that is the foundation of everything. It's the blank canvas on which life is created, right? But without a canvas you can't paint shit. Like magic is the canvas.
Absolutely.
And yeah,
Absolutely.
so
It's like, what paint do you like?
yeah,
And that's
exactly.
the thing is like, I really feel like that's the message I always really want to get across is that, the creativity of life is within you. You can weave magic into every single thing you do with how you
Yeah,
move, how you dress. I mean, how you dress is how you present to people. There is intention in it. It is building a form, what you eat. Well, all of these things are conscious choices.
they
I
are.
mean,
And they if you understand the hermetic principle of correspondence, as above so below and as within so without, the way you dress yourself, the way you present yourself, what you eat, all of these things, everything that it seems exterior to you is actually interior, and what you think of as interior is exterior, and there's no real difference. And so everything you do, like literally, from my point of view, there's nothing but magic. That's all there is.
well, yeah, because we're, even the body, right? What are we? We're a collective of like cells forming something that functions, but they're all independent consciousnesses of their own.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's our body is literally an expression of the entire universe. I
Yeah.
mean, everything is. Same with the clothes, same with the table. So, it's all formed from living organisms.
Yeah. And atoms, right? And
And
I
atoms,
would
yeah.
go as
I mean,
far to
that's what
say
I'm
is that
getting at is
atoms could be
atoms. Yeah.
conscious. Yeah. And those atoms are farther, like the space between those atoms is greater than the mass of the atom. It like this is it's everything is nothing. The
Yeah.
entire universe is made mostly out of empty space. Everything is nothing. The inside is the outside is the inside. Nothing makes sense, and it's all just ridiculous, but it's magic. It's magically ridiculous. And that's that's essentially what the universe is to me. but you can work with it, and that's the point. Is that
Absolutely.
you're here now? You're here. You're at least having this experience, and part of this experience, if you're lucky, is the realization that you can shape the events around your life based on something that we call magic, and however you choose to do it.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we're
Like the vaguest answer anybody's ever given about anything.
that's the thing though, is there is no specific answer, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it really does come down to translating what you experience. I mean, let your results be your proof.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really true. Okay, so we're like halfway through the episode and I haven't done your introduction yet. So let me go ahead and do that.
Cool.
Welcome back to the Order of Chaos podcast. I've got a very special guest today. This is Daniel Adkins, also known as Southern Goth, who is one of the most, in my opinion, talented and sincere tarot readers on YouTube. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah,
It's
thanks for
very
being
much
here.
a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate you reaching out. I was looking forward to doing it. I'm glad we got it going.
Yeah, that was it's man, scheduling is difficult.
It is.
Scheduling
No,
a
I
podcast is
understand.
hard.
I do that all, I am forever battling with my scheduling.
Yeah, same. And this Venus retrograde is not helping. It's
No.
totally kicking my ass.
I used to think retrogrades were, people would talk about, oh, the Mercury retrograde. I'm like, whatever. It's not that big of a deal. No, it's a big deal. It really, really makes a difference.
It does, yeah. But it's not so a retrograde, in my opinion, it's not this oh no time, oh no things happen, but it's like the Tower card. A retrograde is a Tower card, just in a specific area of your life, right? So if it's Venus in retrograde, then we're talking about your relationships, your love life, and your money. If it's Mercury retrograde, we're talking about your thinking, technology, and communication, and so on and so forth, right? But a retrograde, what it really is, just like the Tower card, is it's an opportunity for you to see what's not working in your life and to realign, right? So it shoves everything that's not working in your life, it shoves that in your face, which sucks.
Absolutely. To me, it's all about cycles, because that's what I find with retrogrades is I find myself in similar positions that I've been in, the people returning, the mistakes made, the complications here that I could have prevented by doing this or whatever. It just sort of exposes everything. And you're right. It's basically giving you your crumbling foundation to repair.
It's also, you could think of it as a final exam in a lot of ways. Same thing again with the Tower card. It's like a final exam. So let's say you've repeated the same toxic relationship pattern your last 15 years of your life. You go through a different partner every 6 months, and every partner is the same partner in some way. Eventually, the universe is going to say, okay, we're just going to give you one more try. Can you get this right? And they'll give you the most toxic fucking imaginable partner, and it'll happen during a retrograde. And it's like, are you going to get it this time? Are you going to get it?
I've felt that so many times. It's like, okay, are you going to do this again? Because at a certain point, like you said, especially after so many times, it becomes very glaring. It almost feels humorous.
Yes. Yeah. It is humorous. In fact, this is one of my favorite stories, and I've told it on this show probably too many times, but the last time I ingested a large quantity of mushrooms, all I remember of that evening is having this conversation with Shiva, in which the only part of the conversation I remember was, it's all a joke. God just wants you to laugh. And that's it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's true in a lot of ways, because the most powerful sensations we can experience are joy, or love, or those are what really awakens everything. And nobody got anywhere from just suffering, but and just really leaning into that and not trying to enjoy your life. What would be the point? That's sort of a hellscape we create for ourselves, which again we're sort of herded to, and we're sort of like geared to find ourselves in, where it can be almost, because I found myself literally so stressed before by physical circumstances or whatever the case may be, that even though I consciously know if I experience the emotion, it's going to radiate out more, but it's almost impossible to even experience the emotion. which I
Yeah.
guess is sort of the test in a lot of ways. I mean, we could look at life as a school. It's how to create heaven on earth, right? Or how to create heaven within ourselves.
But some people don't want that, and maybe they don't know that they want it. But so I used to be, and I still am, like I was really big on horror movies when I was a kid. And I realized though that some of these movies, like, man, these give me they give me nightmares. They're messing with my inner vision. They're messing with my everything about me. And I started to ponder, like, why do people enjoy horror movies? It's the same reason people enjoy drama and toxic relationships and war and all these awful things. Like, we have to acknowledge that people enjoy this stuff, that they wouldn't exist if there wasn't a certain level of subconscious enjoyment people were getting out of it. And that's not to say, listen, I'm not one of those people that thinks that you manifest absolutely everything into your life. There's an element of chaos to this. There's the collective consciousness. There is evil in the world. That's an absolute fact, in my opinion. And it's not like if terrible things have happened to you that, like, oh, you chose that consciously. But there is for sure the question, why do we go to horror movies? Why do we repeat toxic relationship patterns? Why do we, why, if you absolutely fucking hate your job and it's miserable, why don't you quit tomorrow? Why don't you? Right. And
Well, I
because
think
there's fear and there's all these strong emotions, but those emotions, we go to the horror movies to be afraid. Why do we do that?
Well, yeah, because I guess you become so familiar with it, it becomes relieving in itself. And I mean, I can relate with the metaphor of the horror movies a lot because, I mean, I still enjoy horror from time to time, but there was a time where I was absolutely obsessed with horror. It's like all I digested. And, that tied in with Magick and addiction and just like a generally dark perspective. I became very paranoid. I became, it all kind of combines into this cancer that we put into ourselves.
Yeah, this very dark consciousness that's, fear-based, but we get a level of entertainment from that fear. And again, I'm only saying this having done it to myself for decades. I'm only saying it, like, to be honest. I'm not saying that it's funny. For me, I know that the moment I stopped, and again, I didn't stop watching horror movies. I still enjoy them, but the moment I stopped being attracted to horror as a concept was the moment I became a father. Like, I don't want bad things to happen to my kid. What, like, and now I can't even watch a cartoon where a kid gets hurt. I'm like, I can't see that.
Same way. I'm the same way. Like, whether it's like a murder documentary, whether it's a horror movie, whether it is like, I do not want to see a child being harmed, or even like that concept to me is just so repulsive. Where, in my younger days, it probably wouldn't have faced me at all. But after having a kid, it's like that concept to me, it brings up such an emotion that, like, I can't even bear to look at that.
So for me, it's the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, which used to be my favorite because I related to the kids in the movie. But now I'm a dad, and I'm like, I can't watch this. I can't even. No, I can't. It's truly horrifying to me now. So, we grow up, and hopefully we get over being entertained by fear and horror. And so we stop manifesting so much of it into our lives. And again, so nobody misunderstands, I'm not saying that if you watch horror movies, you're a bad person or that you're going to manifest bad things in your life. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I'm using it as a metaphor for why we're attracted to fear and pain, because that's something that humans are attracted to.
And a lot of that stuff, I mean, because when we bring it back to Magick, like, right, for example, I used to be really, really into depressive black metal. And again, this isn't like a slight against anybody who's into that, but a lot of that stuff is literally intentionally made to harm you.
It is.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I know.
So, and it's like, I could just go to sleep listening to that. No problem. Yep. Just letting all kinds of unfathomable horrors into my subconscious. And I found it like a lullaby.
Yep. Yeah, dude, me too. I was in more death metal bands than I could fucking name. But I can't listen to it now. In fact, I still like heavy music, but so one thing I think that you'll learn I'm about to go on a whole nother tangent. Everybody hold on to your butts. Okay. But one thing they'll learn if you really study magic is that all music is magic and it's powerful magic. All music is a spell. Every song ever written is a spell. Okay. Whether they meant it to be or not, music is a spell. And this is why traditionally spells rhyme, because it gets stuck in your head. And if it gets stuck in your head, it gets buried in your subconscious. And if it gets buried in your subconscious, then you will manifest it. Right. So be careful about what you listen to, because I grew up listening to Metallica and Pantera and Anthrax, and I love that shit. And then I moved on to like really serious death metal and black metal. And is it a coincidence that I was a deeply depressed person? I don't think so. I really don't. I was an angry, depressed person listening to angry, depressed music. And you think, well, I'm listening to angry, depressed music because I'm an angry, depressed person. No, there's an element of that to it, but you're infusing more and more of it.
It's self-perpetuating.
You do that. Yes. Yeah. In a big way.
Yeah. Right? It's like, go ahead.
No. Go. I rant, man. Go for it.
No. I mean, well, that's the thing is like, it's a conscious string of, it's whatever made that appealing to you, that starts you down a whole path, right? And a lot of people aren't, basically what it comes down to is like, because like you said, it's self-perpetuating, right? But at any point we could consciously observe that and redirect it. And that's where I feel so fortunate that I became aware that it was affecting me. Yeah. And then you can make changes to your life, right? So like, what do you listen to now? I listen to a lot of classical. I listen to a lot of rap music also. I like rap music because it's, it's always about sort of coming out of a struggle, right? Or like finding your way up. I mean, I still listen to a lot of metal from time to time. I listen to some country music. I'm pretty eclectic really. But, I try to, again, stay away from even one specific genre too much, or even listening to music that much. Because again, like it's all geared to make you think and feel something. And a lot of country songs are about alcoholism and sadness. Well, it's interesting. I think the idea came back to me is I think what helps me detach from music more now, and why I become less and less interested in even listening to music. I think that you make a good point of just maybe listening to instrumental music, if anything. But is when I was younger, I used to attach so much of my identity to what I listened to. So, with all the band shirts and everything. And again, wearing all the morbid imagery or whatever, and just as I get older, my identity is sort of attached to less and less, be it horror movies, be it music of whatever kind. It just, it loses its appeal for me in a lot of ways. Yeah. Well, again, so another lesson of magic, something that you'll learn if you're I want to say that my belief is that if you're sincere about learning magic and wanting to know what it truly is, and not just I want to manifest a Ferrari, right? If you're sincerely on the path of magic, no matter what path it is, you're going to come to the understanding that you're not just your ego, and that your identity, while it's an important part of you, and I'm not saying that it's bad, it's not all of who you are, right? You've got your sun sign, your ascendant, and your moon sign. You've got your higher self, your solar conscious, your soul is who you maybe really are. Your identity is something that's been shaped by the events in your life, and something you've formed consciously, intentionally. Like, I want to be this kind of person, so I'm going to do this kind of thing, and it's fun. But it's very small in comparison to the totality of who you are. And when you have that realization, you become far less attached to it. And for whatever reason, that's very freeing. Absolutely. I mean, that's, there's a term for magic. I don't know if you've ever heard it called the yoga of the West. I think that's so appropriate because, I mean, in a lot of ways, you're doing the work of a yogi. You start to detach from different desires, things that, were so important to me at one time in my life. I don't think about at all anymore. Yeah. It just sort of tends to fall away over time. And I mean, they say as you go, even like things like the desire for food or sex or different things like that, you'll detach from it, which sounds horrifying in a lot of ways, but also incredibly.
Well, I would pay a tremendous amount of money. I would give not everything I have because I have a family, but I would give, I can't even say what I would give to be able to, and I know that I'm able to have a magic ability to detach from food. I worked as a chef for almost 20 years. It was a huge part of who I am, but like I eat poorly. To this day, I've tried so many times to correct my diet, and it's the hardest thing in the world for me because I fucking love food so much. I love food, and I worked at some of the very best restaurants in the world. I love cooking. I learned to cook in New Orleans. Like it's such a big part of my life. But I'm always going to be a bigger dude, and that I'm actually, and it has nothing to do with how I look. By the way, I like the way that I look, but I don't like that now that I recently turned 40. Like this is the heaviest I've ever been in my life, and it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, well, I mean that's anything, right? Like because when we have things that are such an attachment in our life, it will inevitably have some sort of effect on us, right? For example, with painting, right? I used to obsess about painting. Like I could not tell you how obsessed I was with painting. I would literally spend like 9 hours a day in the studio. I developed shoulder pain, chronic shoulder pain from painting so much. And it also, in a lot of ways, I'd say benefit me socially, but it sort of took my attention away from people, relationships. It caused problems in my relationships. I was isolating. It's like anything, but it was also such a huge part of me and really still is. I feel less attached to it now than I did, but it's, anything like that. It's, I guess, everything in balance, because when things are out of balance, there will obviously be negative repercussions, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I do believe that it's totally within my power. It's just one of those things that I don't want to do. I don't feel like
I
it.
get that. Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting here smoking cigarettes, dude. Believe me, I understand.
And so this is good too, because I want everyone to understand that you can be out here and be sharing, real spiritual insights. Doesn't mean that you're perfect by any means. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. And anybody out there who's telling you I'm this, and I've had people message me on Instagram, like this has happened a bunch of times, saying like the first thing they say to me is I'm enlightened. I'm an enlightened blah blah blah. And I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not.
Yeah.
No. No, you're not.
You
Don't say
just
shit to
gave
me.
yourself away right there.
Yeah, exactly. Like when nobody's enlightened. Okay. And if they are, they're not on Instagram messaging people about it. Okay. I'm certainly not enlightened. I'm on the path. I love this stuff. I love sharing it with people. I think I've, like I said, profoundly improved my mental health. And now I need to improve my physical health. It's just the next step.
That's been coming up for me a lot too. Well, especially as you get older, right? And you're also like a father. And so you start to consider how long I'm going to be around for them. And like, because before, when you don't have kids or anything like that, it's like, well, who cares? Right. But now there's like something bigger than you, even, so it's like you really have to start, shit just gets real.
Yeah, it does. And you have to think about that kind of thing. You can't just assume that it's all going to be fine all the time. We're running out of time. Fuck. So one thing I wanted to say back when we were talking about music, something that just occurred to me maybe about a year ago, and I've spent this time. And by the way, other people know this. I didn't discover it. It's not common information for some reason. But did you ever play music? Did you play any instruments in your life?
I used to be in bands. I play a little guitar. I do like vocals for death metal bands. I do like funny folk songs.
Okay, so you'll understand this. There are 12 signs, 12 houses, 7 planets. And that's classical astrology. There are 12 notes in the major key. There are 12 notes are in an octave, 12 keys that you can play in, and 7 notes to a key. Our solar system, astrology, our system literally is music.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's different frequencies, vibrations, and they're all bouncing off of each other in different ways, and they can go out of tune.
Yes. Yeah. And you can look at a person's chart and you can see where it's disharmonic and where it's harmonic, right? You can see like what scale is this person in? Is this person a minor mode? Are they a major mode? Are they are they just like a pentatonic scale? There's all these possibilities, just like with music. It's endless possibility within this little set system. And
That makes so much sense. And
right.
that's the thing, is like when we talk about weaving magic into everything, it's all like
It's
how
already
much
there.
how much more corresponding can something be? You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like if you look at anything, you will find the patterns like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And some people would argue, oh, those are coincidences and you're just finding patterns where they're not really there. But this pattern is there. That's the thing. There are 12 notes in a scale and an octave. Sorry, 12 notes in an octave, 12 keys, 7 notes to a scale, unless it's a pentatonic scale. I already know. Don't try to correct me. But then you have these 12 signs, 12 houses, and 7 planets, and they work in the same way. And it's like, that's not a fucking coincidence. It's the nature of reality.
Well, and that's the thing, is like, so with you know how you're talking about how you wouldn't do the LBRP, how you're not going to sing.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I find so much power in singing, or if even not singing, just like say instead of Raphael, it's you know, you can do deep vibrations like that too. Because
if you
I
put
found
that
such
to
a
a beat and I could
it.
play it in my car, I would sing it, but I'm not going to do it here in my basement. Possibly
No,
in
dude,
the shower,
for me,
definitely in my car.
it'll be like a whole opera in here for me. I'll have like candles, I'll have a robe on, I'll be singing the whole thing. It's, you know, I love
That's
it.
awesome.
But I love
That's
theatrics.
awesome.
I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
you know, it's just in me.
Well, so here's something that LeVay said that was brilliant, right? Is that the psychodrama is an absolutely necessary ingredient to magic. And I've got my altar here, and what I do is ritualistic, but I'm a double Leo and I'm extraordinarily lazy. And so chaos magic is very appealing to me.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, that's a psychodrama in itself, because there's certain, you know, the images, like say you sit at your altar and do whatever. I mean, the imagery of your altar, the candles or the incense, whatever you choose to do there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that is the psychodrama.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I guess it's just different ways of going with different folk, you know, different strokes, different folks. But I absolutely agree with that. That I think that, you know, the psychodrama, the theatrics, all that stuff is a very essential element, at least for like adding potency. Because
yes,
I don't know. I mean, there's a reason why, for one, psychodrama is heavily involved in a lot of like forms of therapy, especially like with treating trauma and things like that. And you know, theater is as old, it's the one of the oldest things we do, next to like music. I mean, and it kind of goes hand
music is psychodrama.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah. You know, because like you said, it's like the notes and the words and everything, it creates an image.
Mm-hmm. And then emotion. And then sometimes
that.
you know, how it's so easy to be emotionally affected by music. It's so easy. You know, it's almost impossible not to be.
Every time I listen to, like, I'll listen to music, and I'll literally tear up, like driving somewhere, just like, oh, that is just, it just hits you, you know?
Yeah.
And there are few things that I can think of that are that impactful outside of the arts in general.
Mm-hmm.
You know, particularly music or movies, you know, so it's like theater and music. There is something just there.
Yeah, there really is. And there's, you know, art is magic and magic is art, and they are inseparable. And that doesn't mean any one particular kind of art or one particular kind of magic, but art, like magic, is this ineffable thing that we love and is so important to all humans, but it's whatever you want it to be.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, a lot of people, you know, again, it's like the method actor. I mean, that's unconsciously invoking the songs that you write when you want to have an impact, or when you want to bring up a specific feeling with a song you write. That's magic. That's, you know what I'm saying? It's inseparable. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. All right. Well, shit, man. That was a great conversation. Thank you so much for being on the show. I wish I didn't have to run, but I've got a tarot client in 5 minutes.
Hey, man. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And it was very fun.
Yeah. This is a great conversation. I don't know what to call it because we just kind of talked about everything.
Yeah, we kind of went
But,
around. I don't know.
yeah, whatever. It'll be great. Yeah, man. Thanks again. I'll be in touch. I'll send you that video I was talking about, and come back and do this again.
Yeah, anytime. I'd love to be on. I really appreciate you, and I agree. I think it was a great conversation, and it was really nice getting to know you, just through talking. Because I mean, we've followed each other for a long time, but we haven't really interacted.
Yeah, and last thing I'll say is I've watched a ton of your videos, and at the end, is like I don't know shit about this guy, just that I like his videos. Like you do your tarot readings, and they're really insightful, and like you get a feel for who you are as a person through your aesthetic and the way that you talk, and like especially that you deeply know the tarot, right? But like I want to know who you are.
Well, that was actually sort of part of my intention to sort of keep somewhat of a mystery because I wanted to imply that I know about these things. I'm not talking about them, but I wanted to give the impression through what I say and, just how I present and everything that, okay, this person's onto something here, I mean, because I think that that's, I mean, to have that sort of mystery, it's helpful for the aesthetic, for the brand and all that. So it's theater.
It is. All right. Well, listen, if you watch this episode, just forget everything you just saw and go back to maintaining the mystery.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm definitely looking forward to watching it. And have a great night, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. All right, you too. Talk to you later, dude. Bye.
Take care.